there, friends. Welcome to today's video. I'm going to be going behind the scenes a little bit and answering a couple questions that I get very often, which are, why did I name my company Salt New York, and what is the significance of the lion logo, which is also tattooed on my body? I'm happy to answer. I am a little bit nervous just because it is very personal, but I get asked a lot and happy to share the information. I did realize that while I was thinking about how to answer this, it's gonna sound a lot like I am not answering it and talking about things that do not seem relevant to the name of my business or Salt or Lions for that matter, but to the best of my ability, I do think it'll circle back around and make sense. So I've always kind of centered my life and my artistic expression and the things that resonate with me and that I like to appreciate and like to create around balance. Balance is sort of the common thread through all of the things that I like to do and want to be a part of. And with everything that I pursue, whether it's something small or something large, usually my goal is to try to strike a satisfying balance within that thing. So that can manifest a lot of different ways when it comes to food that I like to make or consume. I'm always trying to find the right balance of seasonings. The older I get with relationships, I'm trying to find a balance between boundaries and vulnerability. In my schedule, I'm trying to balance production and savoring, relaxation. And when it comes to any kind of art form, whether it's something that I am creating or something that I'm taking in, everything from makeup to interior design and clothes and painting and music, I am trying to really balance two different things, or really four, I guess. So one of the groups of two that I'm trying to balance is effortlessness with intention, and the other thing is masculine energy versus feminine energy. And as I get into talking about masculine and feminine energy, I just wanted to clarify that masculine and feminine energy have nothing to do with gender, like binary gender constructs. It's completely separate from gender identities or made up rules. I have always felt like I have a lot of masculine energy and a lot of feminine energy, and I feel comforted by both, and I definitely crave both in the things that I create and the environments that I put myself in. So having explained that, one of the areas where I personally feel like this is really clear is in the two places that I call home. I feel very sustained and grounded by both the city of New York and my hometown of Santa Barbara, California. And it is my personal opinion that New York City is a place that has a lot of masculine energy and Santa Barbara has a lot of feminine energy. You know, in New York, everything from the color palette to the pace to the intensity all feels very masculine to me. And then in Santa Barbara, it's so much flowering growth and the warmth of the sun, and nature just really prospers there, and you can smell the ocean water in the air, and it just feels very, very feminine. So moving on to how this is related to my business name, I knew that I wanted to capture my sort of lifelong pursuit and artistic desire to create balance between these concepts, these forces. So I wanted to pick a name that reflected that, and I thought that taking elements from my two homes would be a good way to reflect it in the name. Obviously, finding representation for New York in the business name was quite easy because we're based out of New York and it's made in New York, so you just put New York in the title and that solves that. Santa Barbara was trickier though, because I didn't want to call it Santa Barbara, New York. That's not a great name. So I was just trying to think of ways that I could kind of encapsulate Santa Barbara without being super on the nose or cheesy. I also knew that whatever the name was, it had to be very timeless and classic. I wanted it to sound like something that has always existed and will always exist, because I hate trends. I hate trends so much. I don't want to start trends. I don't want to cater to them. I want to make classic things, and I want my business to feel like a classic thing that perseveres and is a staple. So one day a few years ago, I was brainstorming different ideas, and I thought, well, maybe if I break it down to more of like an element or component level, then, if I say something like city and sea, like that's super lame. So I was brainstorming and just writing things down. Then I laid down and I closed my eyes and I was just filtering through different words and sand and palm trees and just, not judging my process, just like letting words flow. And when I was laying there with my eyes closed, I was like, ocean, beach, water, sand, salt. And when I thought salt, my eyes flew open at my ceiling and I was like, salt. Salt. Salt, New York. And I like sat up super quick and I was like, holy shit. And I felt like this electricity, like, oh my God, that's so good. And then I just had this flow of reasons why that's the perfect name. And I was actually writing in this notebook. I started writing down like all of the reasons why salt is so perfect. I wrote, enhances what's naturally there. Salt is not its own flavor. It's a flavor enhancer. It brings out what is delicious in a thing already, but it just like does this. And that's a huge part of what I do as a makeup artist. I never feel like I'm putting stuff on people. I always feel like I'm trying to just enhance and bring out what's already special and beautiful about a person. I tailor everything that I do so specifically to the person that I'm working with. I feel the same way about the clothes that I wear and the clothes that I would someday want to make. I wrote, literally makes everything better. Savory food, sweet food, it doesn't matter. Salt improves pretty much everything it touches. Salt is historical and essential. I also have my own personal, just weird relationship with salt in the sense that I love food so much and I feel really strongly about whether or not there's enough salt in something. I have a t-shirt that I got at a thrift store that says "Got Salt?" that I got before creating this company. And it's like the Got Milk slogan, but I bought it because I was at the thrift store with my brother, who's a chef, and we share a love of salt and opinions about what is the right type of salt and amount of salt. Anyway, we were like, who made this shirt? If not you or me, like there's a third human somewhere that thinks, that cares about salt like we do. So there's also that I'm just like, it's one of those things that I really value. And yeah, so just checked off everything on the list. It's historic, classic, timeless, represents kind of my goals, which are to bring out what is already good and, strike balance, and also works for my metaphor of combining kind of like soft femininity of the ocean with structure and masculinity. And also, again, when it comes to anything that I'm creating or appreciating, the other thing that's sort of like right in line with my desire to find balance between the things that I've talked about is something that I refer to as perfectly executed simplicity. I love perfectly executed simplicity in everything. In food, I'm talking about food a lot in this. I guess, hey, I like food. Like an heirloom tomato, a little bit of salt, some basil, and some mozzarella. Just like everything is good and it's perfectly executed, perfectly balanced. This is sort of what I like shape my whole life around, is trying to create and appreciate these little delicious things, whether they be food or art. And I think in food, which is something that I think about a lot every day, salt is a huge factor in achieving perfectly executed simplicity. So I like having that also as like a little stamp on the brand, because I do feel like that's what the palette and the products that I've come out with and the products I would like to come out with represent, because it's simple. I don't want to come out with things that are unnecessary. I just want to perfectly execute simple things that we all want and need, as far as anyone really needs a makeup item. So moving on to the lion and can you see my mosquito bites? I went on a lovely summer evening walk the other night and was devoured. That's because of all my delicious, sweetly balanced simplicity and salt in my blood. Anyway, I was raised in a Christian cult with extremely restrictive gender roles. And as a bisexual with a lot of masculinity, it was a very confusing and shame-filled experience to grow up in that environment. I was never able to help or control any of the ways that I felt masculine, but I was incredibly embarrassed about it, and it felt like something that shouldn't be that way. And I continued to feel like ashamed and weird and embarrassed about the more masculine parts of myself well into adulthood. And then when I left Christianity and got divorced and started to be alive for the first time a few years ago, one of the first things that I did was get this tattoo. And I was really scared because I was becoming a single mother and I was, upending a lot of beliefs that I had always held and just changing my reality on a foundational level in a lot of different ways all at once. But even though I was scared, I felt incredibly energized and brave and strong. And even though it was scary, it was really clear the whole time that I was doing the right things and that I was kind of waking up. Tattoos were very much forbidden in the religious upbringing that I had. So when I got this, I didn't do it as an act of rebellion. It was a choice that I made that felt very significant to me because it was something I decided to do because it felt correct, despite the fact that it did not line up with what I had been told to believe. And that was what felt really liberating about it, because for the first time I was like, I'm not going to feel any guilt about this. I'm not going to do this because I'm acting out. I'm doing this because this feels correct, like an expression that I want to make, and is just fully in opposition to what I've been led to believe, and I'm doing it anyway. And so it was kind of my first big step into doing things because they felt authentic and clear and not because they were something I was being told I should do. I have always felt this is all like very I don't talk about this kind of stuff that much, so it's a process. I have always felt like I just have all this fire and this big fucking lion just in my chest, just like coming out, just like rearing and just like wanting to get out all the time. And I have all of that in my body, in my core, in my chest specifically. And this time period felt very much like the first time I was really like, you know what? Yeah, let's fucking go. Like, let's team up, instead of being like, I don't know if you've heard the scripture, bridle your passions, but that's a big one. And I was like, no, I'm not going to bridle my passion. I'm going to line up with that shit and see what happens. Anyway, I've always had this imagery and this feeling, like this pounding in my chest, like there's just fire and a big fucking lion. And so I reached out to a friend of mine from high school, actually, who's just an incredible artist, and she does these really beautiful renderings of animals. And I described to her what I wanted and sent her some ideas, and we went back and forth, and she did all of the artwork, but we would kind of text what she had so far, and I would give my feedback to bring the vision that I had to life. And it was the most seamless collaboration I've ever had. I'm very particular, and we did it in like an hour. Like it just flowed. And so she designed it, and at the time I was still very much making these huge changes, and it was all very new. And I felt a little bit weird about the fact that it was a boy lion as opposed to a lioness. And I knew that the image that I had and what felt like the right thing that I was trying to express was this, mane and all. And I was like, this is it. And I would play around with the idea of doing like a lioness, and I was like, that's not it. But I also felt like, but shouldn't I feel like a lioness though? Like, is this weird? Is this going to feel weird? But as I have progressed past that and learned more about myself and gotten so much more comfortable with myself and accepted that it's very much okay to feel masculine and feel feminine at the same time, and that that's a thing that exists, I am so relieved and so grateful to my past self that did not understand as many things, that I didn't cave and do something different because I felt uncomfortable a little bit still with the idea of, relating to a man thing. The older I get, the more embracing the different facets of myself is it just feels like breathing, and it feels like living, and doing anything else sounds awful at this point. I spent so much of my life doing stuff I did not want to do and did not feel right to me. I have truly no interest in going backwards. I feel so much more, whole and joyful and at ease the more that I've accepted that it's okay to feel multiple things at once. I grew up having no concept of that, and it felt very strange, and I didn't know how to really process or deal with any of the things related to that, having attraction to different genders and feeling different ways. I just was sort of like, that's not supposed to be how it is. So it was a confusing thing at the time, but I am glad that I didn't kind of cave to those thoughts that I had initially and embraced, what I did embrace. So ultimately, my lion tattoo, I can't show. Can you see it? I'll just flip the screen upside down. My lion tattoo to me represents strength and courage and moving authentically and with clarity and truth to yourself without giving anything to what you should be doing. So that's kind of what the lion and the tattoo represented to me. It's like my freedom and my paving of my way doing what I want to be doing. And the reason it became the logo is because I knew I wanted there to be a visual logo besides just the text of the name. And I could not settle on anything. And the lion kept popping into my head like over and over and over again. And I was like, what? I was very resistant to it because I was like, what does a lion have to do with salt? Like, these things are not related, and it's like messy branding, that's going to be confusing, and no. And then I'd be like, well, maybe I could do this. And I'd be like, my brain would be like, you should do the lion. And I'd be like, can you get out of here? That doesn't make any sense. But I just couldn't shake it, and I'm glad I didn't. And I ended up just deciding to view the lion as like my signature on the brand and commitment to those things that it represents: courage and strength and doing things authentically and creating what you want to create. So that's the story of why it's called Salt New York and why the logo is this lion and why I have this tattoo. Like I said, it's all personal information, but I also wish that I had heard these types of things talked about more candidly when I was younger, and maybe I wouldn't have been so uncomfortable in my own body for so long. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed that. And I also just wanted to thank you guys. I did the math yesterday, and in the last few months during the pandemic, and which is still happening, but in the last few months during, fulfilling the orders for the pre-sale, I hand poured over 10,000 pans of Cream Tint Pro by myself, and I was just like doing it to do it because I had to do it, and I wasn't really stopping to think about how insane and incredible that is. And so when I was looking over the numbers yesterday, I was like, that's nuts. Just overwhelmed by the fact of that, and that I hand poured 10,000 pans of makeup by myself during a pandemic, but also that I have that much support and that this dream of mine is a real thing. And I have all of you to thank for that and for just being, incredibly kind and wonderful to me and patient. And so I just want to say thank you, and holy shit, that's a lot. And so thank you, and I love you so much, and I'll, check back in as soon as I can. I want to start making the Kiki Q&A video, the I'm on a couch series I was doing for a little bit. So if you have any questions you want me to answer, like a kind of like an advice column situation, just shoot me an email at kikiqa@gmail.com. I'm down to talk about whatever, so let me know, and I will talk to you guys soon. I love you. Bye.